It is really important to go back and look at what John F. Kennedy said in May of 1961 when he said, "We will go to the moon in this decade." No American had orbited the Earth. The technology didn't exist. And a generation of young people went into science and engineering and technology, and they were tremendously excited. And they had a future. I actually agree with Dr. Paul. The program I envision would probably end up being 90% private sector. But it would be based on a desire to change the government rules and change the government regulations to get NASA out of the business of trying to run rockets and to create a system where it's easy for private sector people to be engaged. I want to see us move from one launch occasionally to 6 or 7 launches a day because so many private enterprises walk up and say, "We're prepared to go do it." But I'll tell you, I do not want to be the country that, having gotten to the moon first, turned around and said, "It doesn't really matter. Let the Chinese dominate space. What do we care?" I think that is a path of national decline, and I am for America being a great country, not a country in decline.
We're going to move on, but go ahead, Governor Romney.
I spent 25 years in business. If I had a business executive come to me and say they wanted to spend a few $100 billion to put a colony on the moon, I'd say you're fired. The idea that corporate America wants to go off to the moon and build a colony there, it may be a big idea, but it's not a good idea. And we have seen in politics, we've seen politicians, and Newt, you've been part of this, go from state to state and promise exactly what that state wants to hear. The speaker comes here to Florida, wants to spend untold amount of money having a colony on the moon. I know it's very exciting in the Space Coast. In South Carolina, it was a new interstate highway and dredging the port in Charleston. In New Hampshire, it was burying a power line coming in from Canada and building a new VHA hospital in New Hampshire so that people don't have to go to Boston. Look, this idea of going state to state and promising what people want to hear, promising billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to make people happy, that's what got us into the trouble we're in now. We've got to say no to this kind of spending.
I want to make 2 points. First, I thought we were a country where one of the purposes of candidates going around was to actually learn about the states they campaigned in and actually be responsive to the needs of the states they campaigned in. For example, the port of Jacksonville is going to have to be expanded because the Panama Canal is being widened, and I think that's a useful thing for a president to know. I think it's important for presidents to know about local things. Second, and at the other end of the state, the Everglades Restoration Project has to be completed, and it's the federal government which has failed. But second, in response to what Rick said, when we balanced the budget with the 1997 Balanced Budget Act and ultimately had 4 consecutive balanced budgets, we doubled the size of the National Institutes of Health because we set priorities. It is possible to do the right things in the right order to make this a bigger, richer, more exciting country. You don't just have to be cheap everywhere. You can actually have priorities to get things done.
All right, we're going to move on.